If everybody else is doing it and having success, shouldn't Tennessee be doing it as well? Talking general managers here on a Friday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Friday morning Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch. Each and every single day, we're brought to you in part by our friends today over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than over at FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet for just $5, and you can win. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head on over to FanDuel.com to go ahead and get started today. Going to have a two-part conversation, segments 2 and 3, with the host of Locked On College Basketball. That's Isaac Schade. Does a great job. We talk Tennessee basketball and all things Rick Barnes and more in segments 2 and 3. But first, the general manager conversation. It's something that I was waiting to join, Tyler and Will in the afternoons over at 99.1 The Sports Animal on Wednesday afternoon, and I was sitting there on hold, and I heard them talking about this conversation. And it's funny because we've seen this question get asked a lot on the General's Quarters over at VolQuest.com. It's like, well, hey, does Tennessee have a general manager? If not, why doesn't Tennessee have a general manager? You see Ohio State has a general manager. Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Oregon, Alabama basketball, I believe, has a general manager. And it's a decent and it's a fair question in my opinion. To answer the question about Tennessee, no, Tennessee specifically does not have a person listed as a general manager on staff. Now, is that right or wrong? Just because there's nobody listed as a general manager doesn't mean those responsibilities are not being done. Here's the question that I have for you, though. What is a general manager? Because what it is here at Tennessee is not what it is at Oklahoma or what it may be at Ohio State or what it is at Alabama. It depends on who you're asking. It depends on the program that we're speaking of, and also who does the job of a general manager. Is it a businessman? Because the ever evolving and changing landscape of college athletics, do you need a businessman or woman to be a general manager? Do you need it to be a former coach? Do you need it to be a former player? Andrew Luck at Stanford is the general manager. Ron Rivera is going to Cal. Is it Cal? I believe it's Cal to be the general manager. Though, Ron Rivera can kind of make sense. I'm not really sure what a former player can bring to this role unless they have a business perspective from the outside of the game. Because here's the deal. Like in this, in my opinion, if I was the head football coach of a program, my general manager would be the guy that is that is working the middleman with the coaching staff and the collective, saying this player we can offer this amount of money, this player we can offer this amount of money, because now that is legal, right? That is legal in terms of conversation and recruiting with collectives and all that type of stuff. The state of Tennessee fought for that in court against the NCAA. You need a middleman in there that balances the balancing act between the coaching staff and the collective. Your coaching staff doesn't need to be doing that. It's never need to be doing that. The collective doesn't need to be leading that. It needs to be a middleman. And that person needs to be kind of setting the budget, right? That person needs to be telling the head football coach no. And that's the biggest thing in there. Who can tell the head football coach no? Because head football coaches are not used to being told no. They're used to being told whatever they want, yes to whatever they want. Who's going to tell Josh Heupel no, right? And I think that's an important quality that you've got to have in a general manager. Because you can have a head coach that says, I want to go get this guy in the portal, this guy in the portal, this guy in the portal, this guy in the portal. Well, that general manager's got to say, okay, well, these funds we have allocated for this position, the class of 2026, we're going to have to pick from that to go get this guy in the portal. Do you want to do that? I mean, at the end of the day, it's the head football coach's program, but still, you need someone that will challenge him and someone that will tell him no at times. So my general manager would be a businessman that is over a roster, over the final numbers, over the allocations of funds that will go to players, so on and so forth, in recruiting and in traditional recruiting and in the transfer portal recruiting as well. This is not a new term. It feels like it's new now, but I mean, there's been teams that have had quote unquote general managers for 10 years now. In fact, I believe it was South Carolina that stole Tennessee's general manager when Jeremy Pruitt was here. Like, this is not a new thing. It just becomes more and more popular because you hear more and more people, more and more programs discuss it and talk about it. There are even general managers for basketball, which makes no sense to me. It feels like that's just a big time waste of money. Like, why on earth do you need a general manager for a basketball program that deals with 12 scholarship players, 12, 13 scholarship players, whatever that is? That makes no sense to me. That is the biggest waste of money, in my opinion. But again, that's just my opinion. You need one in football. So just because there's not one appointed or announced publicly or listed with the general manager title does not mean that there's not that work's not being done behind closed doors. Support staff, people that are not on the field coaches. There are people that are helping in these roles. And again, I think those roles are different depending on, where you are in the program. So I found that really, really interesting. I thought that it's been kind of a heavily discussed topic here lately. Tennessee does not have a quote-unquote general manager. Will that change in the future? I don't know. Maybe, potentially. But just because you don't have one doesn't mean the job is not getting done. But at the end of the day, anything that will help Josh Heupel or help any other coaches focus on coaching your offense and coaching your team more so than having to deal with all the nuts and bolts that come with all this and the numbers and rankings and money and all that type of stuff. I mean, that's a great thing in my opinion. So if the Oregons, who was widely viewed as the best team in college football all year long, Ohio State, who won the national championship this year, Alabama, that's been up there for the last couple of years, Georgia, LSU, if they're doing it, why aren't you doing it? It's something to think about. It is something to think about. But at the end of the day, those tasks are still being taken care of, even if there's not somebody that's appointed on the website. So just something to think about. I thought that was kind of interesting. Do want to see how this continues to evolve. Do want to see how this continues to change maybe as the years go along. And maybe if that'll ever change here at the University of Tennessee. But I just thought it was something funny how much a general manager could help Tennessee or Tennessee's Josh Heupel. All right, when we come back, we'll get into my two-part conversation with Isaac Schade of Locked On College Basketball. That is coming up next as we continue on here, this Friday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Go ahead and stay tuned, why don't you? Want to tell you about our friends over at PrizePicks. The big game is almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes the fun and simple to get in on all that action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least two players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. That's not bad. Pair that with one or more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, look at Travis Kelce potentially. Maybe the more on his projected stat total. This time of the year, Pat Mahomes, he knows where to go with the football with. That's his veteran tight end, Travis Kelce, again this time of the year. And whatever that projection is for Travis Kelce, maybe look at the more over there. Check out the promos as well during the tabs. You can download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 in lineup. That's $50 instantly, your first $5 in lineup by putting in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. PrizePicks, it is where you can run your game. Hey, I want to welcome on to the show one of the hosts of our Locked On College Basketball channel. That is Isaac Schade. He also hosts Locked On Tar Heels for the Carolina Tar Heels. Basketball 24/7, 365. That is Isaac. Isaac, what's up, man? Appreciate you joining the show.
Oh, Kane, I'm so glad to be here. I'm most excited to talk to you because it's almost time for our Bravos to get things going.
Yes, it is that time. Best time of the year, man. Best time of the year.
Let's go.
All right. Well, hey, what are your thoughts on Tennessee basketball from a distance here so far this season? Typical smothering, harassing defense, annoying for anybody it plays. Come and go offense. It feels like in the second half last night, Tennessee was awesome against Missouri. Couple big wins, some frustrating losses, but this time of the year you look up there and Tennessee is not only one of the best teams in the SEC as always, but obviously one of the best teams in the country.
I love how you put that with the offense, Kane. Come and go offense. That's a great phrase for it. Yeah. I'm going to steal that and definitely not give you any. No, I'll totally credit you with that.
Go ahead.
But yeah, with the Rick Barnes team, defense will be there day after day after day after day, year after year after year. I love that. And I love how consistent it is and that you can take that to the bank. The big question for me, like even coming into the year, was what will this offense look like a year after having probably the best offensive player in the Rick Barnes era in Connect? Who did he just get traded as part at trade deadline?
He did. Yeah. So LA, racked up getting Luka and some others,
Right.
and then they traded Dalton to Charlotte's in the wee hours of the morning,
That's
Thursday
crazy.
morning.
That's such a bummer. I literally just told somebody I'm so excited to see Connect and Luca play together, but now no. Okay. Anyway,
No.
But the question was, what will this offense look like this year? Could it be more balanced? Because one of my critiques of the Tennessee offense last year was they were at times too dependent on Dalton, and understandably so, because he is an offensive ridiculous genius, right? And so this year the question was, can Chaz Lanier be that? Or maybe to a lesser degree, could Darlinstone Dubar come in and be some of that? And it's mostly been Lanier, who's the leading scorer for this team. 17.5 points a game, has been mostly really consistent with that. Obviously a different offensive player than Dalton, but has done it. What I love is that the Vols don't have to rely on him as much as they would do with Dalton last year. For example, man, Igor Milicic, the last couple of games has really come alive. That to me is so necessary for this team's consistency from a longevity standpoint, so that it's not the come and go that you were just mentioning. 19 points the other day in the unfortunate loss to Kentucky, but 21 against Mizzou. And I think he had a double-double, right? 10 boards against Mizzou as well. And that is, listen, folks, I know Mizzou last year, an offer in SEC play. I mean, a big old fat bagel, donut, whatever you want to say. This is a legitimately good Missouri team. And so I know for those who are maybe casual college basketball fans, you look at this and like, why are we only beating Mizzou by 4 at home? That is a big time win for Tennessee, especially when you think of like, hey, the loss to Auburn and Kentucky and the loss at Vandy, losing 3 of 4 there. So now to have beaten Florida and Mizzou back-to-back, that's massive for this team.
Yeah, Missouri, that's a really good win. I mean, and credit that program, and the head coach turned things around, 0-18 in SEC play, 8-29 overall, and I mean that team has knocked off Florida already this year, and we're beating Tennessee by 11 at one point in time, and until Tennessee went on that run there in the second half. But back to Igor, man, you're exactly right. And this is kind of what I've been waiting on all year long. Like, that Tennessee's going to play suffocating defense. What Zakai Ziegler is going to do. For the most part, Chaz Lanier is going to be, the go-to guy. But you need somebody else to step up and really be the Robin to his Batman. And Zakai is, from a scoring standpoint, he's tried to be that this year. Tennessee's not at its best when Zakai is playing that role. I mean, I want him to score, I want him to shoot, but I don't want him to shoot 14 times a game. Igor Milicic has got to be that guy that I've just been waiting on all year long. And you're right, the last couple of games he's been so aggressive. And at points in times, it's like he doesn't have the confidence to shoot the basketball. But here lately, he's been rebounding the ball really well all year long. But here lately, he's been phenomenal. Him and Zakai Ziegler both, I'm going to ask you about that Florida win here in a moment. But him and Double Z both missed that Florida game. Yeah. He comes back the other night against Missouri. And according to Opta Stats, he is the only player in the NBA, WNBA, Division I men's and women's player this century to have a game with 20-plus points, 10 rebounds, 5-plus assists, 4-plus blocks, 2-plus steals. I mean, just phenomenal. What? If he's the guy that can, I mean, he's not going to give you that every game, but if he can be consistent for you on the offensive end, I think Tennessee can be so dangerous in the month of March.
Because what that does is exactly what you were saying, but let's bring it together. If Zakai Ziegler can be the distributor that the good Lord above created him to be, averaging 7.5 assists to lead this entire ridiculous conference, maybe the best conference ever this year. I mean, it's just, I shake my head every night there's an SEC slate going because it's just so insane. Yeah. So if Zakai can be the distributor that he's supposed to be, and let Lanier go do what he needs to do. Let Igor go do what he needs to do. Lob it up to Felix and let him just be in the dunker spot, right? Like that is Tennessee offense at its best. And so that when we get good night, when both Chaz and Igor are doing that, and you get Gainey contributing his 11 points a game, whatever it is, that's what Tennessee's going to have to do to reach the ceiling of what this team could be. And I think there's possibility for that ceiling to be pretty high.
You look at, you mentioned how incredibly tough this conference is. And Tennessee was going through a little bit of a slump there, right? I mean, going into the Florida game, they lost 3 of their last 4. The previous time they played Florida, they got embarrassed on the road by 30. Sometimes that happens. You're coming off, and I said it all week. I mean, the sky wasn't falling, the season wasn't over, but you had a Kentucky team at home that were down pretty much 2 starters, and the game's at home. You got to win your home games in this conference. That was a bad loss to Kentucky. It was. So you're limping into this Florida game at home last Saturday. And what did Tennessee do? Down 2 starters, down your guy in Zakai Ziegler, down Igor Milicic, who we just spoke on, only 7 scholarship players, and Tennessee beats him up by 20. I mean, that right there was the most typical Rick Barnes type game. It's like everybody in the world's counting him out. The fans are just like, oh my God. I mean, myself included, I was talking to some buddies. I'm like, oh man, unless Chaz goes off and scores 30, this game is going to be bad. It was bad for Florida. I mean, what a showing for Tennessee, but also I think it was a reminder to the rest of the college basketball landscape, football school, that like, hey, Tennessee's here and Tennessee's still going to be a tough out.
Kane, I am right. I've been trying to think all week of a moment this college basketball season or other recent seasons where I was more shocked at not only the result, but the breadth of that result. Like, A, I could not believe that Tennessee won that game. B, I could not believe that Tennessee won that game by 20 points.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Down the personnel they were, given everything going on. I mean, it just was the most shocking result. But it was plainly obvious from the tip, right? Like, oh, these guys are locked in. This is a circle the wagons moment, and they're doing everything they can to say, we ain't going to get beat up again like we did the last time we faced the Gators, and we're down 2 of our brothers. Like, our 2, I know Igor's not the second leading scorer on this team, but with what we've seen from him lately, like, he probably will be. He needs to be, I should say, down the stretch, right? So essentially, we're down our top 2 leading offensive, put it in the basket kind of guys. But who cares? We're going to buckle up and we're going to go. And that's, with, I was so impressed, and it gave me even more hope for what Tennessee could be down the stretch. And honestly, Kane, as I look at the schedule, there are no easy schedules in the SEC. That would be a misnomer, but there's no more Florida. There's no more Auburn. There is a Bama game and it's at home, right? Like, so there's a lot of possibility of being able to navigate this schedule pretty well down the stretch. Yes, got to go to Rupp. Yes, got to go to College Station. Fine, whatever. There is hope for the rest of the schedule to be manageable with maybe just another loss or 2. And if so, the Vols are going to be sitting pretty, not only for the SEC tournament, but heading into Selection Sunday.
Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every moment more and exciting than over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on all that action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what is happening on the field, and the app is super easy to use and navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that is icing on the cake. Download the app to head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. Just bet $5 and you can win. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel. It's official partner of Super Bowl 59. It's where you can make every single moment more. And it's a whole lot of fun. That's FanDuel.com. All right, what everybody likes to ask, right? And there's no answer because it all comes down to who's hot, who's not, matchups, all that and more. What do you see this team doing in March? How far do you see this team going, right? I mean, my normal answer is like second weekend team, right? Because Sweet 16, okay, kind of bow out there. But I mean, obviously this team's got the talent to go past that. Tennessee's second ever Elite 8 appearance last year with Dalton Connect. But again, it's kind of like you look at this team and you might be they're short a little bit because they only have 9 guys, scholarship guys, but nonetheless, they kind of have more depth. I feel like a little bit in comparison to last year's team. Anyway, what do you think about this team? What do you think the floor and the ceiling is in the month of March?
So what's interesting is I look at March, the thing we always talk about. Let me just say big picture. Yes, I'm with you. I think second weekend is not only like, can we get there? I think that's got to be the expectation for this team. Like they're that level of good. So that for me is the floor. The ceiling is probably Final Four. This, like, given what Duke is, given what Auburn is, given Iowa State, if they can get back healthy, I don't think this is the front runner to win the national championship. Could Tennessee get there? Absolutely. If things break the right way, if the offense is clicking. So what has to happen is the defense has to continue to be what the defense is, which I have no doubts that's going to happen. One of the most important things that you need in March is a guard. You've got Zakai Ziegler, one of the most experienced, capable guards in the entire country. Obviously, he's got to be healthy, right? And so glad to see it was just a game that he was out and then back. That was an encouraging sign to me. But if he can continue to distribute, which he's going to do because he's Zakai freaking Ziegler, and then if you get Chaz to keep going and you get this version of Igor Milicic, I mean, there are great possibilities for. Could this be the first Final Four team? Could we be looking at? I mean, I'm not going to rule that out. I think it is very possible, but they've got to find consistency offensively. That is the biggest thing for me. And if they can hit from the outside, where Vols are 34% as a team from outside, right? Yeah, that's good enough. We're looking for 35-36 for a national champion. That's the goal to get there. But 34 is enough for a Final Four. That is doable in a reasonable expectation for this team.
I'm going to hold you over here for overtime. I hope that's okay.
Great.
Tell me about Oklahoma. Tennessee, Oklahoma coming up this weekend. Oklahoma, and Texas, of course, you're winning the conference first year here. What do you like about the Sooners and what's the keys for Tennessee in that basketball game?
For sure. Oklahoma, it's funny. They've basically had a mirror season the last 2 years. Last year, they started off 10-0. They took their first loss in the Jumpman Invitational, and then kind of the wheels fell off from there, and they wind up starting 10-0 and then finishing 20-12 overall, 8-10 in SEC play. It was not a great year. This year carried more promise because they got to 13-0. Since then, they've gone 3-6, Kane. And it's just getting into SEC play. I think they were exposed for what they are. Part of the problem is their best player, in my opinion, is a freshman, Jeremiah Fears, who is a dude. Make no mistake about it. But he is a freshman that doesn't have, like you think about other, if you like a Tahad Pettiford is a great example at Auburn, right? He is an absolute stud, but he's got Janai Broom around him. He's got Dylan Cardwell. He's got Chad Baker, right? All of that to go around him. Fears has to be the guy at Oklahoma. So for me, if you can stop or at least slow down Jeremiah Fears, you're in good shape. Jalen Moore's a dude as well. Watch out for him. But I feel like things should be in good shape. And I'm surprised I know we don't have the FanDuel line as of yet, but at KenPom, the line is just Tennessee by 4. I feel like that's too small for me. This feels like an 8 to 10 point victory for the Vols at home. No.
Like I'm sorry.
Team. It's in Norman, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in Norman.
That makes more sense with a 4-point line. Yes. Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, this Tennessee basketball team takes after the Tennessee football team a little bit. Sometimes on the road, not so good, not so sure. And that's just this league, though, man. I mean, these teams so good at home. I want to ask you about Rick Barnes, man. I mean, obviously a Hall of Fame career. He's already in 3 or 4 different Hall of Fames. Made his first or made his Tennessee first Elite Eight last year. He's made a Final Four with Texas, so on and so forth. One of the great coaches in this era, no doubt. He's made some comments here lately. I don't know any inside baseball here, but he made a comment at the Tennessee Quarterback Club a couple weeks ago, talking about Zakai Ziegler, and he was like, "I'm gonna be real with you. If I didn't have him right now, I don't know if I'd still be doing it." So that's led to a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, a lot of talk. Of course he's nearing the end of his career. It's a year by year thing with him now, but it's oh man, could this be it? Zakai's going on. Having said all that, when you think Rick Barnes, what do you think of? And kind of where would you put him in terms of, top 5, top 7, top 10 coaches in college basketball right now?
It's funny. When I think Rick Barnes, I think what shade of orange? Because from Clemson to Texas to Tennessee. No.
Yes.
And the reason I think that is because he has succeeded wherever he's gone, from George Mason to Providence to Clemson to Texas to Tennessee. He's been a guy. He does it the right way. And when people think of those Clemson teams, for example, in the ACC, man, they were feisty. And it was like a different version of Rick Barnes, where it was like, bro, you need to mature some. But now it's like elder statesman Rick Barnes, who is just revered around the sport, right? And I love that, especially at a place like Tennessee, where basketball, maybe on the other side of the gender, is just so revered in the way it is. And his name is going to be up there, and it should be. Right now, what is he just at Tennessee? Has over 200 wins now. Really good stuff there. When it's time for Rick Barnes to hang it up, he's going to be mentioned at, he's not a national championship coach yet. Will he get he's one of those guys where I'm like, man, I want to see a national championship for him. I would just love that, because
people of this podcast would be for that too, for sure.
Yes, I'm in favor of such a thing as that. But just to cement his reputation and who he is. But to have done what he's done at multiple different stops is nothing short of impressive. And when he is done, when he hangs it up, he will be somebody that I will say college basketball got worse today because Rick Barnes is no longer part of it. Mm-hmm. And we've seen, unfortunately, an exodus from college basketball of that older guard in the NIL and portal era, from Roy Williams to Coach K to like 5 other coaches in the ACC, from Tony Bennett to Leonard Hamilton at Florida State this week, Jim Larinaga a couple weeks ago. Obviously, man, when we look at Villanova, just losing an absolute legend, and they haven't been able to get back. Like, Rick Barnes is going to be in that exact same conversation to me of like, man, this is another of this guard gone. Same when Tom Izzo leaves Michigan State. It's like that vibe.
It's kind of interesting. Well, first of all, you mentioned Roy Williams, who I know you're a fan of. He and Rick Barnes are like best friends, like really, really close. He was actually sitting courtside at Tennessee's win over Missouri the other night. So I thought that was kind of neat and kind of interesting.
Yep. In his pink sweater with sweet Miss Wanda.
Yeah. But like, I think Rick really enjoys it. See, I thought, with the whole, the last couple cycles, transfer portal, you having to reconstruct your roster and all that. And I think he really enjoys kind of doing that. I think he likes the puzzle of, okay, you're on the gun here. You got to assemble your roster. You got to build it together, kind of play GM a little bit. I think he's enjoyed doing that a little bit more than I thought that initially guys like him and that old regime would, that kind of old guard would. Now, I do think like the whole, I can't remember the exact sequence, but you had, Toby Awaka and you had Jonas Adu last year. Toby Awaka entered the transfer portal, just wanted to play more minutes. Jonas Adu ends up leaving, and so it's like, well, Toby Awaka could have come back, and then it's like, okay, well, he was going to come back, and it's like, no, Arizona sounds pretty good over here. I'm going to stay out there. I was like, this right here is the stuff that's going to drive him into retirement. So, again, I think he enjoys kind of doing all that, but obviously he's not going to do it much longer, and I think when he does hang it up, obviously he's going to be he's going to be missed for sure, here at Tennessee and really in college basketball.
And of course, as we all assume, Toby Awaka is having a year down at Arizona, and Adu's basically doing nothing at Arkansas, right? Like, I totally knew that was going to be doing. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's college basketball, right? One of the last questions I want to ask you, if I were to say, what is your biggest surprise about Tennessee basketball this year? I've got an angle I'm working in my head, and I want to see if you go there. What's the biggest surprising thing or player or factor or lack thereof about Tennessee this year when you look at this team?
I think it's that the offense has stayed, like, it's obviously not last year's offense. I thought it would have taken a bigger step back this year than it did. Okay. And that has been impressive to me because we knew, like I assumed that Chaz would not be the same level as Connect, but to hit on mid-major players being your dude offensively in back-to-back years, we so often worry and wonder about guys transferring up, right? From mid-majors from North Florida like Lanier did, and Northern Colorado like Connect did. And so to be able to have done this now in back-to-back years, to be top 35-ish in offensive efficiency at KenPom, I think that's been the biggest surprise to me, is that the offense has been, as we said, it's been up and down a bit, but it's been better than I expected it to be. That's my
last thing I was trying to lead you to this question, see if you bring him up, because I know you and I talked about him when he transferred in. Not that I thought he was going to come in and be what Chaz was, or I thought Felix Okpara was a huge addition, but Tennessee's first addition was Darlinstone Dubar from Hofstra. Yeah. And when you look at 3-point shooting percentage and efficiency and all that, and I thought he was going to be a massive gift for Tennessee. He had some things going on to where he spent a little time away with the team.
Yep, that's right.
He didn't participate in some practices and a couple of games to begin the year, but he's been there, and his role is so undefined in my opinion. Like, he gets in there and he's all over the court, and he shoots the basketball as soon as he gets it. He misses a defense on the other end, doesn't box out on a rebound. Rick pulls him, chews him out, and then that's it. It's like, but then he'll play 3 minutes a game, and then he'll play 18 minutes a game. Against Florida, he obviously had to start, and he played like almost 30 minutes a game. You don't win that game at Texas without Dubar, what he did in the second half. You don't win a couple other games. So it's like he's been hit or miss. I think he's the type of guy that he's never probably ever going to find consistency with Tennessee, this being his only year. But I do think that's the type of guy that can really help Tennessee have a spark off the bench, or some energy off the bench when you need it in the month of March.
Right. I think that's the point, Kane, that we got to think about is Yeah, he's been the biggest disappointment for me because of I mean, I remember having conversations about like, is it going to be Lanier or Dubar that is like the transfer that comes in and does it most, right? Like, it's silly to think about that now. And what's interesting is at some level, you gotta kind of scattershot things in the transfer portal, knowing that some are going to hit and some are not, and you just take the wheat and the chaff with those kind of moments. But yes, because of his experience, because of what he did at Hofstra, there's going to be a moment in March, whether SEC tournament or NCAA tournament, when Rick Barnes is going to need his experience to step in and say, Darl, I need you to get in there, man, and do whatever it is, and just, he's going to play a role, and there's going to be a minute that matters. And that's the thing. We don't know when that's going to be, but I'm right with you. There's going to be a moment where he is going to be needed.
Got a lot of great stuff happening over at Locked On College Basketball right now. You and Andy Patton, what do you guys got coming up over the weekend, next week? I know we're getting closer into March. Got some big things on the horizon, you two. A lot of good things happening as the basketball season starts to wind down, but every game feels like it's even more important.
Yeah, I mean, we are just over a month away from conference tournaments, which is crazy. And so right now it's a lot of, we always hold ourselves, we're not allowed to have bubble talk till February 1. So this week has been like, we're really starting to get into more bubble talk, more seed talk, and looking at where teams are at and who needs to do things to make the tournament, all of those kind of things. So that's probably the biggest shift in our attention right in this moment is really who is aligning themselves well for March and who's got a lot of work to do still.
Awesome. Well, we'll be dialing in, checking it out as basketball season continues on. Isaac, thanks so much for joining us, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Go Vols.
Really awesome stuff there from Isaac Schade, again, the host of Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Tar Heels. I'll be talking with him throughout the month, throughout the rest of the month of basketball, a couple different times. He and Andy Patton do a really, really great job. So appreciate him for joining the show. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. You guys know it, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And please tell your friends, tell that Tennessee Volunteers fan in your life that this is the show for them. Got baseball season starting next week, basketball season continuing. We're getting closer to spring football. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, and we'll meet back on Monday morning. This is Locked On Vols.